Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Now, I have two products here, and I want you to tell me the difference between the two of them. I wonder if you can. Give you a second. No? Well, one of these MacBooks is an M3 and one of these is an M4. They are both MacBook Air midnight devices. You literally cannot tell the difference between them. So today, we're going to talk about the differences between an M3 and an M4 MacBook Air and what one you should go with if you're stuck deciding. So if you're someone like me who has always wanted a MacBook Air, you might be stuck between looking at all these different products at all these different prices, and you see the new M5 MacBook Air and it's over £1,000, and you see the M4 MacBook Air and it's around £1,000, and then you see the M3 or the M2 MacBook Air and they're closer to around £600 or £700, and you might be thinking, okay, well, I know that they are MacBook Airs, they look almost identical, but what really is the difference between an M2, an M3 and an M4? And in this example, we've got an M3 and an M4, which I've spent a little bit of time using. Now, the M3 is my wife's device and the M4 is mine. So I'm not a crazy person that just has multiple of the same devices. But I did use my wife's M3 MacBook Air for a little bit of time just to gain a little bit of comparison and do some of the things that I would normally do on my M4 MacBook and see really what the difference actually is, because there is quite a big price gap between these two products, and there's a huge market with a lot of people still selling the older chip MacBook devices. And the reason why they're doing that is because they are still so good. Apple has made their silicone so powerful that there's not really even any need to always upgrade to the new M series chip when they come out. For example, my MacBook Air M4 is plenty good enough for me right now. The M5 has come out and I don't feel the need to upgrade right now. So I just wanted to take this time to talk about the main differences predominantly between the M2 and the M3 and the M4 MacBook Air, because those are the two that I've really been hands-on and using, and just give you guys some feedback. So if you are someone who is deciding, should I go and get a newer M series chip, or should I save myself a bit of money and get one of the older M series chip? Hopefully I can help you out with that in this video. Now, I have compared these two devices side by side. They're both midnight, they're both MacBook Airs, and honestly, there is no difference between the two in terms of their hardware. I have noticed a very marginal difference in terms of the midnight coloring. It seems as if the M3 MacBook Air is slightly more bluey than the M4 MacBook Air, which seems like it's a bit darker and closer to black. I'm not sure whether that's something that's intentionally been done by Apple, or whether it's just the differences between the two devices and the way that they were created. But that is honestly the only difference I can see between the two hardware. They both have the fingerprint scanner. They both have the screen pretty much on them. The keyboard's the same, the trackpad's the same, the dimensions are exactly the same. So why would you opt for an M4 version of the MacBook Air, or even an M5 over an M3 or an M2? And it's simple, the performance. Now, Apple generally tends to claim around about a 20% performance uplift from generation to generation. And really, when I was using the two devices, I can say that's probably about accurate. There were some bits that I was doing on the M4 MacBook where it was some video editing, and I was flicking between some other tabs to get some different pointers whilst I was editing the video. And on the M3 MacBook, there were some times where the device didn't necessarily stutter, but it just took a little bit longer than I'd prefer. In terms of the two, when I was rendering videos, I definitely noticed a performance uplift on the M4 MacBook in terms of the time that it took to render videos as well. So I would say for someone who is a content creator, for someone who wants ultimate efficiency and for someone who really wants that maximum power, then yes, I probably would recommend upgrading to the new device, especially if the price is roughly the same. But if you're saving yourself £200, $200, let's say, for example, going for a previous generation chip, for the most part, especially if you're just browsing the internet, doing some online shopping or some working, and even for students, I would highly recommend going for one of the older chips. You'll save yourself some money and you won't notice a massive performance drop off between the two. And in terms of the hardware, there is really no difference. Now, obviously, we've got the MacBook Neo now, which sits in a slightly lower price point. But I would highly recommend, if you are somebody who wants to just get a bit more out of your MacBook, probably opting for an M2 or M3 MacBook as opposed to the Neo, because in terms of the price points that you're going to be picking up these M2 and M3 MacBooks for now, you're probably better off with one of those than you would be with a Neo. Now, that being said, I've made a video on the Neo. Tons of other content creators have made a video on the Neo. And honestly, the performance on it is stellar. But I just think if you're someone who wants to just do a bit more with your device, if you're someone who wants to photo edit, video edit, and even do maybe some light gaming, very light gaming, it is a Mac after all, then probably opting for the higher end M series chips is your best option. Plus, from a thermal perspective and a longevity perspective, you're sort of seeing yourself out for a little bit longer if you do purchase one of the M series chips. You're going to get a bit more wear and a bit more usage out of the device. And then just from a heat perspective as well, they're all fanless designs. If you opt for a higher end processor and higher end silicone, it's going to be struggling less with sort of general everyday tasks, which are going to mean that you're going to be able to keep the device cooler, and that will help with the longevity of the device as well and the battery life. So I would still recommend, most likely, if you are someone who wants to do that sort of stuff, video editing, some light content creation, probably opt for one of the M series chips, because you're going to be getting the most out of the device. You're going to be getting the most longevity out of the device. And honestly, that price difference is going to be a lot smaller on the M2 and M3 than the jump between the Neo, let's say, for example, and an M5 MacBook Air, which is now over £1,000. Now, I know you get double the storage, but honestly, upgrading the storage on these things is not super difficult. Plus, a lot of people use external SSDs, myself included. So it's not necessarily a super big issue when it comes to these products. And also, I'm the type of person that has a massive iCloud drive, and most of my stuff lives on the cloud anyway. So generally, what I would say is it's worth saving yourself a little bit of money if you don't need that ultimate performance from one of the newer chips. Honestly, the truth is that Apple have been doing such a good job with these M series chips since they were first launched with the M1, that it really has been a complete game changer for the MacBook lineup. And even now with some of the newer A series chips being put into laptops, Apple is just showing how powerful their silicone is. And I honestly think their move away from the Intel chips and moving into making their own chips is really what has set them apart from a lot of other OEMs in the space. They have been truly maximizing the performance that you can get from a chip for so long. And even the M1 chips now in 2026 are at a point where they're better than most Intel Core i5 processors. And once you start getting up to M4 and M5 level chips, and even into the Pro series chips in the MacBook Pro lineup, honestly, the performance that they are managing to pull from these chips is incredible. They have truly set themselves apart from other OEMs on a performance level, for creators, for people who want to, use their device for multitasking, and just generally students, everyone. The MacBook has really set itself strides ahead of its competition. I won't make a separate video talking about the Intel versus M series chip debate, because there is really no need. I honestly don't see anybody comparing the Intel chips to the M series chips in terms of their performance. The M series chips are honestly elite, and it just goes to show how far ahead Apple is in terms of their competition, to the point where you can go back and buy an M chip from 2 or 3 years ago and still be competitive with some of the devices in 2026 that are being released now. It just goes to show how ahead of the game they are, and it is truly incredible to see. So I would honestly say, if you are somebody who wants to save a little bit of money, but you still want a MacBook, you don't want a Neo, you really want something that can do just a bit more multitasking and a bit of extra work creatively, whether it be, like I said, light gaming, video editing, photo editing, or any more strenuous tasks that you feel might not be handled on the Neo, I think the M2 or M3 chips are a super good option. I really didn't notice too much performance difference between the M3 and the M4. There were some times where I did find myself feeling like I could do with a small bump of power, but I think that was just me being impatient from the fact that I'm just so used to how quick my M4 MacBook is, that I was just thinking, why is this taking longer? But generally, I think that there is deals to be had out there on some of these older chip devices. There are reasons why people are still selling them, and it's because they're still a great deal in this year, in 2026, and even potentially in 2027. It just depends what they come out with next. I mean, with the way that things are moving, who knows what's going to be next for them, what the next MacBook's going to be, could be anything. So it's super interesting, but that's my take on it anyway. I've used the M3, I've used the M4. I can honestly say I could live with the M3 quite happily, and I think the majority of people could live with the M3 as well. I even think the majority of people could live with an A series chip, especially if you're just doing your standard sort of internet browsing, online shopping, viewing YouTube. There's not always a need to upgrade. There's not always a need to have the latest and greatest. You don't always have to have the top end device. You need to have the device that suits your needs. And I think, again, that's something that you can take away from this video as well, is that you can be smart with this. You don't always need the top end device if you're not going to be doing the top end performance tasks on your device. So understand what your use case is, and then pick the device that matches that use case. That's it from me on this one. Let me know down below in the comments section if you're using a MacBook device and what chip you've got in yours. I'd be super interested to hear if there are people using M3 or even M2 MacBooks in 2026, or if you're the type of person that likes to upgrade to the newest chip every year to get the maximum performance. I'd love to hear it. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out.